The last thing Yuki Tanaka posted online was a 10-second video. No caption, no explanation, just her trembling hand holding up her phone in a dimly lit subway tunnel. The camera pointed at a woman standing motionless at the far end of the platform. The woman wore a surgical mask and a beige trench coat. She wasn't waiting for a train. She was staring directly into the camera. The video ended abruptly. Yuki never posted again. That was 3 weeks ago. Kenji Matsumoto was 23 and worked the late shift at a tech startup in Shibuya. He didn't believe in ghosts or curses or any of the old stories his grandmother used to tell him. Those tales belonged to a different Japan, a rural Japan of rice fields and mountain shrines. Not here. Not in this city of glass towers and bullet trains. But even skeptics notice patterns. It started with posts on social media. At first, they seemed like the usual urban legend recycling that happened every few years. But this time felt different. The accounts were too specific, too consistent. A woman in a surgical mask, always alone, always at night, always asking the same question. The hashtag #MaskedWomanTokyo had been trending for 2 weeks. Kenji had scrolled through it during his lunch breaks, half amused, half disturbed by the earnestness of the posts. There were grainy smartphone videos of empty streets, blurred figures in the distance, testimonies from people who claimed they'd seen her near Shinjuku Station, Harajuku, Akihabara. Then people started going missing. Not many, just enough to be noticed. A university student who posted about an encounter and never showed up to class again. A salaryman who told his colleagues about a strange woman near the Meguro River. He stopped coming to work, his apartment was found empty, his phone disconnected. The police called them runaways. Coincidences. But Kenji had seen the video Yuki posted. He'd known her, not well, but enough to recognize her username on a Discord server they both frequented. She wasn't the type to run away. She wasn't the type to post cryptic videos for attention. She was terrified in that video. He could hear it in the small, sharp intake of breath right before the recording cut off. The rain was relentless the night Kenji stayed late at the office. His coworkers had left hours ago, their desks now dark islands in the fluorescent-lit sea of the workspace. He'd volunteered to finish debugging a client's software, partly because he needed the overtime pay, partly because his apartment felt too empty lately. It was past midnight when he finally left. The building's lobby was deserted, the security guard's desk empty. Kenji pushed through the glass doors into the rain, pulling his jacket hood over his head. The streets of Shibuya were never truly empty, but at this hour, they came close. A few scattered salarymen stumbled past, drunk and heading home. A taxi hissed by, tires cutting through puddles. Kenji decided to walk to the station. It was only 10 minutes, and the rain had a way of clearing his head. He was halfway there when he saw her. She stood beneath a flickering streetlight, her silhouette perfectly still amid the falling rain. A beige trench coat, just like in Yuki's video. A surgical mask covering the lower half of her face. Long dark hair plastered to her shoulders, dripping. Kenji's first instinct was to keep walking. Tokyo was full of strange people, especially at night. But something made him slow his pace. Maybe it was the way she was standing, too still, too deliberate. Or maybe it was the fact that she wasn't holding an umbrella, wasn't seeking shelter, wasn't moving at all, just standing there, waiting. He told himself it was coincidence. Surgical masks were everywhere in Japan. The woman was probably just waiting for someone, or lost, or dealing with her own problems. He would walk past, mind his business, catch his train. But as he drew closer, she turned her head toward him. Even from 10 feet away, he could see her eyes. They were dark and focused, locked onto him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice soft and polite, the kind of voice you'd use to ask for directions or the time. "Can I ask you something?" Every rational part of Kenji's brain told him to keep walking. But social conditioning ran deep. You didn't ignore someone who spoke to you directly. That was rude. That was un-Japanese. He stopped, though he maintained his distance. Yes, his voice came out smaller than he intended. The woman took a step closer, and in the flickering streetlight, he could see her more clearly now. Her coat was old-fashioned, something from decades past. Her hair hung in wet, heavy strands that obscured part of her face. But her eyes were wide and unblinking, rainwater streaming down her cheeks like tears. "Am I beautiful?" she asked. The question hung in the rain-soaked air between them. Kenji's mouth went dry. He knew this story. Everyone knew this story. But stories weren't supposed to be real. They were cautionary tales, entertainment, folklore. They weren't supposed to be standing in front of you on a Tuesday night in Shibuya. I have to catch my train," he stammered, taking a step back. "Please," she said, and there was something pleading in her voice now, something desperate. "Just answer me. Am I beautiful?" Kenji's heart hammered against his ribs. He could see the train station from here, its lights glowing through the rain just 2 blocks away. So close. He could run. He probably should run, but he couldn't move. The woman tilted her head, studying him. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her hand to her surgical mask. Her fingers were pale, almost translucent in the dim light. She hooked them under the fabric. "Wait," Kenji started to say. She pulled the mask down. The scar tissue ran from ear to ear in a grotesque curve, a permanent smile carved into her face. Her mouth, what remained of it, was a twisted ruin of healed wounds and exposed teeth. The flesh around the cuts was waxy and wrong, like melted plastic that had cooled in the wrong shape. But worse than the sight was her expression. Above that ruined mouth, her eyes filled with tears that mixed with the rain on her face. She wasn't angry or violent. She looked hopeful, desperate, like a child asking for approval, for validation, for someone to tell her she was worth something. "How about now?" she whispered. "Am I beautiful now?" Kenji's mind raced through every version of the legend he'd ever heard. Every supposed escape method, every trick. Say yes and she follows you home. Say no and she kills you where you stand. Say you're late for something. Throw candy. Shout specific words. But looking at her now, at this broken, tragic thing wearing human shape, none of those responses felt right. They felt cruel. She wasn't a monster from a story. She was real, and she was suffering. "I think," Kenji said quietly, his voice barely audible over the rain, "that someone hurt you very badly, and I'm sorry that happened to you." The woman froze. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, something like recognition flickered across her ruined features. "No one ever," she started to say, her voice cracking. "No one ever said." She took a step toward him, and Kenji fought every instinct to run. She was close enough now that he could smell something wrong on her. Old perfume mixed with the metallic scent of old wounds, of things that should have healed but never did. "You don't have to answer my question the way they did," she said softly. "You don't have to lie or run or try to trick me. You see me, really see me." She reached into her coat pocket, and Kenji's breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was where the scissors came out, where the legend fulfilled itself, where he became another missing person, another cautionary tale. But she didn't pull out scissors. She pulled out a surgical mask. Clean, white, unused. "You should wear this," she said, pressing it into his hand. "Tokyo is getting dangerous. There's something hunting in these streets, something that wears faces it doesn't deserve." Before Kenji could respond, she stepped backward into the rain and the darkness. The flickering streetlight died completely, plunging that section of street into blackness. When it stuttered back to life 3 seconds later, she was gone. Kenji stood there for a long moment, his hand clutching the surgical mask she'd given him. It was real, solid, proof that the encounter had happened. He made it to the station on trembling legs. The last train was pulling in just as he reached the platform. He collapsed into a seat by the window, watching the city blur past in streaks of light and rain. It wasn't until he was almost home that he noticed something strange. There were more people wearing surgical masks on the train than usual. Not sick people trying to be courteous, not the typical considerate commuters. These people sat too still, stared too intently, and every single one of them was watching him. Kenji stopped going out at night after that. He told himself it was because of work, because he was tired, because the autumn weather was getting worse. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. He'd started seeing her everywhere. Not the woman from that night. Other women, other people, all wearing surgical masks, all standing just a little too still in crowds, all watching with eyes that held the same desperate, hungry question. The posts on social media continued. More videos, more testimonies, more disappearances. But now there was a new pattern emerging, one that made Kenji's blood run cold every time he saw it. People who encountered the masked woman and treated her with kindness, they saw her again, and again, and again. Not as victims, but as witnesses. They became marked, able to see what others couldn't see, able to recognize the others like her, the ones who wore masks to hide what had been done to them, the questions they could never stop asking. Tokyo, Kenji realized, was full of ghosts. Not the dead, worse, the wounded. The ones who'd been hurt so badly that they couldn't move on, couldn't heal, couldn't stop seeking the one answer that might make them whole again. 3 weeks after his encounter, Kenji found Yuki's social media account had been reactivated. She'd posted a single photograph. No caption. Just her face, holding up a phone for a selfie. She was wearing a surgical mask, and in the reflection of her phone screen, barely visible, were dozens of other masked figures standing behind her in what looked like an empty subway station. All of them were staring directly at the camera. Kenji closed his laptop and walked to his bathroom mirror. He looked at his reflection for a long time, studying his own face, whole, unmarked, normal. Then he opened the drawer where he'd hidden the surgical mask the woman had given him. He'd been too afraid to throw it away, too afraid to wear it. But he understood now. It wasn't a gift. It was an invitation. In a city of 14 million people, how many wore masks to hide their pain? How many had been hurt so badly that they became something other than human? How many were walking among the crowds right now, asking their questions, seeking their answers, spreading their curse to anyone kind enough to see them? Kenji picked up the mask. The fabric was soft against his fingers, clean, pure white. He wondered what question he would ask when his time came.